Hello, everybody. Something a little bit different today for our channel here. Last week, some friends and I had the absolute pleasure of canoeing on the French River in Ontario. So I thought today I'd come on and give you a little idea about what the French River looks like, but more importantly, for the History Symposium channel, some of the history of the French River and why it's so important in sort of the history of early Canada and our First Nations friends as well. So the French River flows through the Canadian Shield. And the Canadian Shield, if you're not familiar, it's a huge region of rock, a lot of granite rock that basically encircles Hudson's Bay. And because of glacial retreat, um, it left mostly that exposed rock. And today it's absolutely stunning in its beauty. And so you can see some images there of the waterways and that exposed granite rock. And it also left a very thin layer of topsoil. So not a huge amount of vegetation, but lots of pine trees and that sort of thing that just create an absolute beauty. And there are many of us that live in Ontario or have traveled to Ontario that think that this is some of the most beautiful region in the world. And if you don't know it very well, this area of the Canadian Shield is hugely popular for cottagers and that type of thing. Um, but you still can escape to the wilderness in the Canadian Shield, and some of our first days on the French River will show you some images, and we were um, really in the wilderness, almost without contact in any other kind. The video you can see, though, we've started to get closer back to civilization, and you can see power lines, and we start to see more cottagers and boaters and that sort of thing. So the French River flows roughly from Lake Nipissing to Georgian Bay, and it was a very important link on the fur trade route in early Canada. So the fur trade was incredibly important to Canada. For those of you who are not overly familiar with the early history of Canada, um, before it became a nation, um, there wasn't a huge amount of early European settlement in Canada. Um, Rather, there were major centers, and a lot of the interior of the country was explored by Europeans as they were um, traveling to trade with First Nations people, particularly for the beaver. That was one of their favorite trade goods. And so, naturally, as in order to get the best furs, historically Europeans had to travel further and further into the interior. So the French River was a really important link in that trade route. Um, so, roughly, if you can picture Montreal, um, the Ottawa River flows to where Ottawa is today. Um, and then you can take the Mattawa River, and that connects to Lake Nipissing. And the French River connects Lake Nipissing to Georgian Bay. And once you've got to Georgian Bay, you're into the Great Lakes region, and um, you can travel huge, vast distances on the Great Lakes. The Lake Superior, the northernmost Great Lake, is a hub, really. Um, so it was named the French River. Obviously, it had an indigenous name and an Ojibwe name, but it was the Ojibwe peoples who are part of the larger Anishinaabe group, which on this channel you've maybe heard us refer to the Anishinaabe before. Um, so the Ojibwe are one small part of that group, and they were the ones that started calling it the French River, obviously in their Anishinaabe language, because of the French missionaries that it brought into the region. And some of those really important um, French missionaries and French early explorers include Etienne Brule and Samuel de Champlain, some very famous French explorers in Canadian history in the early 17th century. And so that fur trade route would continue to be used. The Montreal to Great Lakes route would continue to be used throughout the 17th, 18th, and even into the 19th century, though by the 19th century, it had been pretty well superseded by the Hudson's Bay route. Um, but it is an absolutely stunning route. And I would like to pause here on my history lesson and just show you um, some more pictures of just how beautiful it is. And I hope that if you're ever in the Ontario region, you get the chance, please, please, please travel up to the Canadian Shield, the Muskoka region, Algonquin Park. It is absolutely stunning, and even just watch a sunset there because they're absolutely beautiful. So that's it for me today. A little quick history lesson, but we hope to see you in the fall as we continue our lecture series. So we'll hope to see everybody back then. Thanks so much.